part when you're fishing for a flathead is to know every half hour of the tide to have at least 2 different spots you can go to depending on which way the wind's blowing. And you keep changing spots, unless the fish are really thick, you keep changing spots every half hour or so and keep working. So for those of you who just go out for a family fish or to catch a few flatheads just to muck around, even you guys should move probably 4 to 6 times in a 3-hour fishing period. You don't just anchor up and throw in one spot. Actually, don't anchor up at all. Okay. But we'll talk about that as well.
We will.
Yeah, so I'm going to unpack this while Stu talks to you. You can ask some questions. Or whatever you want to start with.
Has anyone got any questions at the start? Like anything that you want covered or anything like that? Not really. No. We'll go through everything, as Dougie said, from start to finish, what we do before we even start. Like obviously looking at tides, looking at wind, looking at what day's bringing, and then you've got to kind of figure out a game plan before you leave. That's the biggest thing. So if classic example, if it's blowing really hard northerly, generally the water up the pin gets dirty earlier. I don't know if it's because the wind fetches on the water quicker or anything like that. If it's blowing northerly, I generally fish on the south end. If it's blowing southerly, I'd like up the pin type area. Better water quality, more bait, and there's more area up there. But yeah, we'll go through a bit of everything while Dougie gets ready.
Get ready.
So you're going to
I've
question about the netting on the
Yes,
flats.
mate. Yep.
Tell us more about that.
Okay, so every single year, this time of year, the netters love to net for flathead. I don't know how they target them, but they love doing it. A couple weeks before the Flathead Classic, and they net it really hard. And they have netted around Tipler's type of area in the last 2 weeks. I've seen them doing it. Does it take every fish? Probably not. You can't take every fish out of the area, but it takes a lot. And unfortunately, that makes fishing a lot harder for everybody else. But there's a few telltale signs. So if you pull up to a spot and you see lots of weed floating, like ribbon weed, particularly like 5-inch pieces, all floating in the same direction, like in a long line or something, 9 times out of 10 it means there's a netter there or has been there in the last tide cycle, so the last day. And you'll probably notice there won't be many pike around or much bait because when they net everything. But makes it really hard. Yeah. There are some zones up the pin area that you can't net in, so those lagoons up near the pin bar, they're a net-free zone. That's why there's always so much bait in there and things like that. But unfortunately, the good spots like around Tipler's and all that area, it's open slather, and they make the most of it. So, yeah. Unfortunately, it's a good excuse, but if you go somewhere and you catch up and you can say, the net just went through yesterday, and it's a bit of an excuse for you.
Never had that problem,
Yeah. Well, neither have I, but it's there in the mental diary. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
there is one other way of finding out too, and that's what Stuart and I saw the other day, was a lot of the fish we had, especially around that sort of 38 to 44 centimetre size, they'd obviously gone in the net and wiggled their way out, and where the back fin comes down, about that point there, just about where their arsehole sort of, they had a big net mark on their backs.
Yeah.
And a little indentation. So they'd be pulled out of the net, or they're on the side, because they're on the sides, or they've got out themselves. And I would have to say, the fish we got the other day, probably 5 to 8 of them would have had that mark on them.
At least.
Or damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty amazing.
Yeah. We caught one flatty, and like it still fought really hard. It was about 43, and it was just behind the last fin, like before its tail, it kind of went straight to the bone, and then it kind of came back out. Like it was a really bad scar, but really healthy still, and quite fat, but it's obviously had a bit of a rough life. But
Yeah, good stuff, mate. Yeah, so so I'm going to talk about the rods and reels first, and then the lure selection. There's a fair few lures here, but obviously you don't take this many lures fishing. Well, we do, but you guys don't need to. You sort of, everyone has their favourite plastic, and until you actually start catching more fish on another plastic, then it doesn't change. You always go back to that one bucket. Our job is to obviously test new stuff. It's good for us because we've got to try it. Because when you got something that's really good, you don't never try it. Try something else. So, and there's a lot of stuff that works really well at the moment.
Yes,
That's working really good. So I picked out sort of like, probably out of this sort of 30 packets here, there's probably about 6 or 8 that are working really good at the moment. but others do work other times too, and in different areas, and definitely some plastics work better in some areas than others. Okay, but some rods and reels. So we both have like 3 or 4 rods each that we take out fishing. When I go to Stuart's boat, he says I bring too much gear and vice versa.
Yep.
But my rods, do you want to go through your rods first, Stuart?
You go
first,
through
mate.
yours. Yeah.
So I'll start the heaviest. So for you guys that do go on to cast lures, I'm not going to talk about it tonight, but my rod's that one there. So it's a 4,000 size reel. I've got 20 pound braid on it, but a very thin 20 pounds, so I can cast a long way. And it doesn't distract the action of the lure, so the lure's really good action. I'm using fairly big lures. I don't like using segmental lures. I like to use solid lures. So that means no joints in it. And I don't like to use anything bigger than that. For me, that's a big lure for flaties. Still catch 80s and 90s on that, or smaller. But that's my casting rod, and the rod's rated 10 to 25, so it's quite a heavy rod. It's actually the same rod as your snapper and Julie's in that too. My lead on there is 25 pounds, so it's a fairly heavy leader too. So a lot of those big flaties, especially 90 plus, their mouths are bigger than the width of that, are wider than that lure, and it'll probably get inhaled. And the chafing that they do at the top of the lead is quite aggressive. So if you're using like 12 pound lead, you haven't got much of a chance if you get a big one, unless you're lucky. I have a couple of backup rods, but my main casting rods, actually, sorry, I'll just get it out of the way. This is my troll rod. So my troll rod's really soft, like very soft. It's like a 4 to 8 or a 6 to 10, 5 to 10 pound at the most. I like to see the tip will be working the whole time when you're trolling. Trolling little lures like so. The braid on that I think is 8 pound, and the reels are 2,500 size. And my leader on that is 12 pound. And normally when I'm fishing in comps, I put a little 16 pound bite leader on the top there for about probably 15 centimetres long. I join it just with an Albright, and I go from 15 pound to sort of 10 or 12 pound. 16 pounds, sorry, 10 or 12. The reason I do that is that always ends up down its backside, a big fish I'm talking about. And the big ones, they do a lot of head shakes in the shallow water, and it's forever like aggressive, like boom, 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 boom. And it'll just quickly shave off 10 or 12 pound, even 16. I get it sometimes, the occasional one I miss, I lose everything. But 20 pound will take too much action away from the lure. So 16 is about the borderline. Then I have my 3 casting rods. In my 3 casting rods, I have a light, medium and heavy. This is my light one, which is a little Zodius. I think it's 4 to 8 pound. My braid on there, I think is around about 10 pound. And I'm using a little 3-inch. It's one of the new power bait shrimps, which are really good, by the way. I like shrimps because shrimps don't just fall down. Actually, they glide down. And that really turns the flatties on to bite. Okay, whether it be a Gulp shrimp or a perfect power bait or some of the other shrimps as well. And the tail action is very good when you do the hop. And the next one I have is just a little bit heavier. It's another Zodius. This one's, I think it's 6 to 12 pounds, which is my favourite rod to use. My braid on there is actually 15, I think, on that one, 15 pounds. And that's my most popular rod that I use. I use a very thin 15 pound. Now in your bag, so you guys got a very thin 15 pound. It's a Japanese braid, okay? So if you've got other line on the reels, unless it's thinner, I'd change it to that maybe, unless you're happy with it. Or if you've got a reel that's doing, add it to it. But that one there's definitely a good outfit that I like to use. And my heavy outfit is my old little Loomis, which is it's also a 6 to 12, but it's a heavier 6 to 12, okay? It's very sharp, it's not bendy at all. And that one there I've got, it's 15 pound braid, I think.
Yeah, 15.
15 as well. And that one there I'm using up to about a 3/4 ounce jig head or an ounce jig head. So my rod's shorter, it's stiffer, still 2,500 sustain, but the rod's quite aggressive in the deep. So when you fish in the deep water, you can't have too soft a tip. Okay? So we're going to talk about deep water tonight as well. Any questions on that at all before I go to Stuart? Okay, so you probably all got rods in that sort of category.
Yeah, so I fish exactly the same gear as Dougie, but I just go lighter. So like my trolling rod, I just run like a little 1000 size reel. That's just on like a little 1 to 3 kilo type of rod. And I run 3 pound braid to a 6 pound leader. And in a competition style, I'd probably run like a small bite leader, as Doug was saying, about 6 inches long of like 10 or 12. I don't go anything heavier. I've never had one bust me off fight in it. They pop in the boat, but that's alright because you can still dig your lure out. But the lighter line and the thinner line, your lures swim a lot better and deeper. So it's a lot less drag. And you always tie a loop knot to your lure, or use one of the little fast attach clips. Something quite something nice and loose. You don't want it like a tight fit. But that's my trolling rod, and I might occasionally cast like a really small plastic on it, like a 2-inch Gulp shrimp or something like that. A lot of guys think that they're like a brim style lure, and they are, but they're really good for flatties when the bite's shut down. I go very small. And I only use a 2-inch one because I don't make a 1-inch one. And then going up in size, that's like my light casting rod for plastics and stuff. So I've got 6 pound braid, and I run a 10 pound leader on this one. And I've just got one of the little small Samaki vibes on it at the moment, just a little bait fish pattern, white bait pattern. And they're quite good. They do catch a bit of weed, unfortunately, because you've got 6 hooks there, but you can shake it off. So, but every rod is very stiff. I like stiff rods for hook set in, bit better cast in, and better feel. Dougie, did you want to say
No, you
something?
keep going. Yeah, I thought that too.
Yeah, and then I've got 2 heavier rods, and these rods I kind of double as my deep water / flat. Very hardy.
Don't break my leg.
That's right. Deep water, casting hard bodies up on the flats for bigger fish on the high tide, and just casting drains and stuff like that as well, with like a 1/4 to a 3/8 of an ounce head. And both have got 6 pound on. I run a 20 pound leader in the deep, and I run a 16 pound on the flats. Just for those bigger hard bodies and stuff like that, because you cast in a lot more weight. And yeah, but both rods very stiff, good for hook set in, and good for steering big fish around, because they do get a bit angry in the shallow stuff at times. But yeah, every rod I use is very stiff, just because if you look at a flathead, the whole top mouth's solid bone, and you've got to drive any hook that you've got through that. The only exception is the troll rod that's very soft, because you're using a lot smaller hooks, so you don't want to pull them out.
And at the speed you're doing it.
And at the speed, yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things Stuart spoke about was a fast attach type system, which is like this little thing. I'll pass it around so you can have a better look at it. But when you're fishing with lures or jig heads, like for kids it's really good. All you do is it's tied to the end of your line, your leader. It's also a little bit of a bite security, but you just put the lure or the hook on it, the jig head on it, so, and that's it, it's already on. So there's no knot tying or any of that. It's also quite a big loop, so it's got plenty of movement as well. Okay. So very good. So I'll pass that around. Be careful, the hook's very sharp, guys. I should put something in that hook. Yeah, I'll leave one.
Yeah.
Sorry. Don't stab yourself.
So how do you decide the jig head size?
Yeah, so depends on where you get the fish and what you're going to do.
Depends on depth,
And
depends on if it's weedy bottom or sand bottom. Obviously, if it's weedy, you go
windy,
wider.
big current, little current. A lot of things come into play. In my tackle box, if I'm gonna maybe fish the deep on the day, I will still use very light in the deep if I can get away with it. Like one of our friends the other day was up there. We were using I was only using I think 1/4 ounce.
Yeah, I was using
and I was fishing like 30 feet deep.
Yeah.
But you talk to the white boys, they're using like a 3/4 ounce or a 1 ounce sinker, 1 ounce jig head, which is like that size there, which is a really popular one to sell actually. I'll just keep passing stuff around this one. And they're vertical jigging, so they just drop it down the bottom, lifting up maybe 1/2 metre, then just lifting it like that, and that's what they're doing. Not even doing any winding or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just teabagging it, so to speak.
Yeah.
But at the moment on the deep, a lot of time they're up on the right of the edge, especially on the high tide, or if you got like a tide running out and you get like an eddy, they'll be up on the flat or just below the flat, the next layer. So most of your deep water guys, how many people have fished deep water, like being like jumping pin or the seaway? Sort of 20, 30 feet deep, 6 metres deep. Anyone here done that? Yep. So you'll know that the fish on the high tide or the low tide are right up on the edge of the shallow. And as soon as that tide starts running and the water gets a bit too shallow, they drop into the next level. And every deep water, which means like Clinga Bank or Swan, at front of Swan Bay there in North Stratty, or Crusoe Island, it has like a layer, has a shallow little bank at the high tide. It drops off 1 hour of the tide running out, it becomes exposed, so it's gone. So they drop down to the next level, and they always have like 3 tiers. So the next level is about probably 2 metres at high tide, but at low tide it's about maybe only that deep. So once the tide gets too low there, they'll drop off to the next level, which is the deep. Okay, but the fish aren't always necessarily on that edge. Sometimes they're out in the middle of the paddock, might be a little gully in the sand, or might be a log sitting out in the middle of the channel, 30 foot down, you don't know about unless you see the sounder. That's the sort of structure that holds bait and it'll hold the fish there as well. So you define those spots.
Yeah, they're like steps going down the bank. Yeah, and they just fall off of them. Yeah, go into the next one.
Yeah. And it's the same scenario on sandbanks when you fish in sandbanks. On the high tide, they'll be up on the flat, but once the water gets just too much, they'll then drop off the flats into drains or small channels that run between the banks, and they'll drop into there, and then they'll probably swim through that and into the main channel, and then you either sit at the end of the main channel plucking them off as they come out. And they'll generally, unless there's bait down a bit further, they might not go too far. They'll sit at the entrance there, or they might sit in the drain. Then once the tide starts to come back in, they go back the other way, and you get them again, because they're all stacked up there, ready to get back up on the flat and feed again. So you got to try and think where they're going to be at all times.
Yeah.
Or where they're going, or where they're going to come from, and catch them. Yeah.
If there's a lot of fish on one bank, you should be able to fish that bank for 6 hours, the whole tide cycle, well, 12 hours.
Sure.
And just because on the top of the tide, generally they're up on top of the flat, and then on the low tide, they can't be there. They're around the edge. You just got to try to track which part they're going to fall off, and fish it that way. But
I'm just going to draw this here, guys, and this will give you some explanation of what we're talking about. Do you want to talk about something while I do this?
we won't talk about your artwork because it's not real flash. But
Oh,
so I think the biggest thing is you need to try to read a bank, and every bank's got a certain characteristic to it. It might be a slightly higher, softer part of sand in one corner, or could be some undulations because of fast current movement, a dead tree in the middle, a certain line of stingray holes that are deeper than the others. You can't overlook anything. The best thing to do if you can is pull up on a bank, just go out in the boat, take no rods, pull up on a bank and walk it, and a flathead lie is pretty distinguishable, like you can see it, and look at where they are, and you'll see a common theme, like they will sit on the edge of a stingray hole because the sand's softer, because the stingrays just pumped it up, or slightly softer sand like on the backside of a yabby bank, or behind a tree, or anything like a little tougher weed in the middle of the bank. It might hold 3 fish around it at high tide, but a lot of people would overlook something like that. So I think the biggest thing is don't overlook the simple stuff. They're all like little 1% points everywhere, but a lot of 1% points like add up to a lot of fish at the end of the day if you don't overlook them. And you just got to be smart about it. Obviously, if your boat can float in it, a flathead sure can, because they only need that much water, and your boat needs that much water, so depending on the size of the boat. But if you can get up there, there's going to be flathead in that area, 9 times out of 10. Yeah. But I've cast lures into like 3 inches of water off a bank, and I've caught a 90 centimetre fish in that depth. As soon as the lure hit the water as well, just on the edge of a weed bank. Just came out of nowhere and it smashed it. And that was before I could move it or anything. But yeah.
Are you expecting the fish there, or are you just casting it and hoping there's going to be a fish around?
I'm expecting the fish to be there as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. A lot of the time
Well-
as well, you're looking for bait all the time. So like those barren sandbanks that I was saying, they might hold heaps of fish and you think, what's there? But on a high tide, all whiting go up there and feed. And those big fish, there's nothing for them to eat like a 25, 30 centimetre whiting.
The yabby holes,
It's- yeah.
seaweed patches, cormorants feeding, it all comes into play. Yeah. So the scenario here, this is a big sand, this is all sandbank, okay? And this is obviously the water here. And they're little drains, so at low tide, there's nothing there, a little bit of a little shallow bit there. Shallow bit there. This might be a metre deep, but at high tide it's quite deep. And then this is the main channel out here. And this area here has weed patches on it, and it's maybe only like that deep at low tide. But the bank around it's maybe a foot higher. So what would happen, I'll start from the tide being high, and this is mangrove trees lying along here, right? So when the tide's high, what Stuart was talking about before, this is all white sand of yabby holes or whatever, those bigger flathead the bait will be holding along the edge of the tree line here, and there might be a bit out here if there's a bit of weed, but they'll be hiding in here. And you'll get up on there at the high tide with your either soft plastics or hard bodies, and you'll cast this whole area along here where the bait is, along here. And then when the tide starts to drop, maybe an hour later, it's starting to drop and it's getting a bit shallow for you to even be up there in your boat. You need to get out. These fish are going to start moving off there. Some will come into this area here, into that. So you might want to sit here and cast up on that. It might be that deep at halfway out tide, and you pluck some big flatties off there maybe. But most of them will drop into this little drain here, or drop over into there, then onto the edge. And once the tide becomes fully exposed, this is like 3 or 4 hours later, you might go to some other area and come back to here. Once the tide's dropped and that's only like a metre deep, and this is say 2 or 3 metres deep out here, most of those fish that are all up on that area, this might be like, 1.5 kilometres long and half a k there, so a lot of flatties. They're going to be, most of the fish are going to be, might be few in the middle here, most will be on the corners of that and that, waiting, because they've been sitting there on the run out tide feeding all the bait fish coming out. That's where they'll sit, there and there. But then it comes out of here, they'll be sitting along this edge here, not that edge because that's running tide, it's the run out tide. They'll be sitting there. So I'll sit in my boat around about here. My boat's like that shape sort of thing, it's an ugly boat. And I'll be casting up in that area there and hopping it back towards my boat, and they should be sitting facing into the current along there. That's how the scenario works. That's the sort of thing I look for. And here, where this area here is, they might be sitting here because they've come off here, dropped in here, then they drop down to there, and they're sitting all here waiting to go back up. But once the tide starts to come in now, I need to switch over to this side here, my boat, and cast up current to here, and hopefully get the fish as they're coming in from wherever to come into here. And I'm casting in this direction, this direction, this direction, so up into the current, up here, and all those fish are going to be coming from somewhere to get up on there to get ready. They'll sit in this little drain here as it's filling up, and then they'll get ready to go back on the bank. And the same here, the fish will sit all the way along here, and as soon as that gets enough water in it, they'll slip into there, and there'll be bait in there, and they'll be feeding on that bait already. Then once that gets over there onto that next plane here, and this is starting to fill up in here, they'll start spreading out again. That's how it sort of works on the whole tide. Does that make sense? So if you can find that bank that's got that opportunity, that's how you catch them.
If you're fishing on the left-hand side of that drain,
Yes.
or no, the other side.
I hear yes, on the run-in tide.
On the incoming tide.
Yes.
And the fish are going to work their way in.
Yes.
Are you going to cast up current?
100%.
Bring your lure.
Back with the
Fish will
current.
be pointing that way.
Fish are facing in the current and
Yeah.
one bring the lure back past their heads, looking up, coming
Are
back.
you going to try and bring it across them?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But they'll also, now when there's not too much current running, I'll cast both ways actually,
Yeah, okay.
because they'll swim around and chase it, or they'll see it go past them that way.
Have a
The
go.
opposite way, they'll turn around and grab it. Yeah. But when there's a lot of current, it's harder.
Yeah.
They'll sit into the current always. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's more of a hard thing to keep bottom. if you're fishing
Yeah.
against tide.
Sure.
But the secret, guys, is as soon as you get that little bit of water goes over that weed, those fish will be right on that edge there. You've got to sort of know when they're going to go up to that next level that we talked about before. When you know that they're going to swim up from that depth to that depth, then you pepper cast that whole edge there, because I'll be sitting on there just getting ready to go into that next one. And you might even see the odd fish, because you visually see them, the big ones, and you'll see them swim up onto the flat there a bit. And same here, you know, if you could put your boat here and cast up here, because you know they're going to come in that drain there. So you cast up into the current here, from here, and get them as they're coming in here. And same here, sit your boat there and cast up here, this area here, or sit your boat there and cast up here, because they're going to be wanting to come up into here. And it's like that 24/7 every spot when you're fishing banks. I
So
don't know about you, Stuart, but that's what I reckon.
Yeah, 100%.
So are you anchoring now or are you drifting?
No, so I have an electric outboard on my boat, but I don't use it much because it always breaks down. So I have trouble with electric motors. So I took the thing off, and now I just use my boat. I'm a bit rough on my boat though,
Yeah.
but my boat becomes my hydraulic jack, the motor becomes the jack. So in this scenario here, if that's say a foot deep, or not quite a foot deep, if I want to cast up to here, say, if there's not much current or the wind's against the current, that's the best scenario, because I don't need an anchor or anything. I'm hardly moving with the current, but I can cast long with the wind and pop it all the way back with the current.
Yeah.
If the wind's, so in that case I don't use any of this, I just drift really slowly back that way with the current. If the wind is with the current, I'm in deep shit. So what I'll do then is I'll drive in as much as I can drive in, and then once and I have the motor tilted right up, go as far as I can on the shallow part here, and then once my boat stops or I want to stop, I'll tilt the motor down and lock myself in the mud with my motor. It's the only way I can do it, guys. It's the only way.
Doug's motor is a bit of a universal one. So it's a motor, it's a yabby pump, it's a power pole, it's everything. It does it all.
Are you sponsored?
Oh. No one could afford to.
Yeah, with coins. But it works so good. And you know the best thing I find about not using my electric now, because I use electric a lot, is that I find I'm now actually forced to cover more ground because I'm drifting more, and I get a lot more fish. If I hold myself on my motor, I tend to be, it's a bit of 50-50, but I tend to be too much in one place, give it one more cast. Whereas I'm drifting, all of a sudden I'm on again. Not always. But when it's windy like the other day, we had no alternative but to do exactly what I just said then, because I didn't have my electric. And I wish I had my electric, because I just hold in a spot and I just cast it, be easy all day long.
Yeah.
But it's a give and take thing, you know. But that's how you do it if you have no electric.
Yeah.
Just a question on anchoring with your motor.
Yes.
How often do you change your water pump over?
Yeah, okay. Not very often, but Stuart's an outboard mechanic, but he does my motors. So
Luckily, the E-Techs have a really big impeller,
Yeah.
and they're quite forgiving because Doug gives them a really good workout. But yeah, you should do it a bit. Try to turn, if you do that, guys, try to turn your motor off and then put it down.
yeah,
Put it up.
I do that. I don't dig my way in.
Yeah.
I just goes down.
That can be debatable, but anyway.
The hard part is if it
Yeah.
comes up windy and it gets too much water in there and I start to float in and get stuck, then I have to dig my way out sometimes.
Yeah.
You step out, you sink up to here in mud, you know.
I think, like, I've never had an electric motor before this year. I went on
Stuart's
a
never
barra
had one either,
trip
actually, by the way.
and
Yeah.
I bought it for the barra trip. But I still go out flathead fishing without it. And I think it makes you 500 times better fisherman if you can fish without it. Because you have to read the wind, you have to read the water, you take more of a, more notice of what's going on around the area. And if you had an electric, you just pull up to a bank and say, I want to fish that spot, put the spot lock on, and that's it. It's going to hold you there. Whereas if you don't have an electric, you've got to think, right, the wind's going this way, the tide's going that way. Am I going to drift across ways that way? How fast am I going to drift? And set up a drift pattern to fish that still successfully. But if you look at the top 30 teams in the Flatty Classic, if they have an electric problem, 9 times out of 10 they'll pull the pin and they'll finish like crap because they don't know how to fish without it. They're too reliant on technology. Yeah, and I think it's, if you can fish out of a tinny with nothing, you're way further advanced in the field.
Taught the hard way.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
But too well. Anyhow, so that's the scenario, guys, that you look for. And fishing the deep is a similar scenario with any creeks coming out, with any bays, that they'll drop off into the deeper water as the tide goes down. And as it goes up, they move back up again. So that's the only place that really doesn't work is, it does work in the seaway a little, because the seaway on the south and north wall, you get those little sand spots up in the rocks on the high tide. Only about half the size, about the size of a tyre, say 3 foot in diameter, 2 foot in diameter. And what happens is the flatties, or the bait will be cruising on the edge of the rocks. The flatties will sit up in that little sandy patch, and in just waiting in disguise, they'll bury or whatever, they'll just sit there, change their colour, and when the bait goes past, they just pluck it off. So what you do is, you get on say the north wall of the seaway from the little opening where the sand beach is between the two areas on the north wall of the seaway. From there, right around to say the second green, you've probably got about 15 white patches to cast. So you just work, on the high tide, you just work every one of those patches. You cast right onto the white patch. And it's really important you guys learn to cast accurately. It's so important, you know. And when you've got those ripples coming out of that corner there, and you're sitting here, you need to cast perfectly right there where it joins onto the other current. Because for them, it's easy for them to sit in that current. They don't have to work so hard, and that's exactly where they're going to be. If you cast over here, you might get one, but you get a lot more there, and you probably pluck sometimes 5 out of the one little spot. They're stacked up. Okay. So any questions on that at all? No? Good.
If you are casting up onto the rocks at the seaway, surprisingly, you don't get too many snags because you're fishing very direct. So you can fish it in those little crevices and stuff, and you're fishing more over the top of it. You don't get that many snags.
And then once the tide gets below that sand, so everyone says there's no sand in the rock wall, but there is actually sand patches along that rock wall up high. And then once that sand gets exposed, they drop down to that next ledge, which is about that deep. And then once that gets shallower, they drop down to the deep, which is about 20 foot deep. Okay. But that's when you get snags. We get lots of tackle.
Yeah, plenty. Yeah.
If you lose it. Okay, so we're going to go fishing. So what are we going to choose? Okay, let's do a weather scenario. So I'll do a northerly wind, which is the hardest. You can do a southerly wind, Stuart. Okay.
I was going to go the opposite, but anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do a southerly wind. So if it's blowing southerly, one thing I like about southerly wind is the water's clear. Okay. So I can fish nearly anywhere because the water's clear. I just can't fish in the wings. It's too hard. So I'm going to think, okay, southerly wind's blowing 20 knots. It's a bit cruddy. What I'm going to do, I'm probably, and the tides say high tide at midday, and I've got a low tide in the morning. So the wind normally isn't too bad first up in the morning. So I'm probably going to be doing like this scenario at the low tide. So I'm going to go out there looking for that sort of drain, wherever it might be, whether it be the alder shots or up jumping pin, maybe sort of around Tiger Mullet Channel or anywhere like that sort of area.
What about when there's no flow?
No flows, what we had the other day, no flow. There's a bit of an outflow, but the morning high tide was very low.
Minimal low.
Yeah, so in those scenarios, they don't move much, and you've just got to find where the bait is. Once you find the bait, just hound it pretty good. Yeah, but when you got it's a hard one. Flatties, like everyone says they do their thing. The big girls come out on the full moon, or some guys say the new moon. We say the full moon.
Yeah, I've always thought full moon.
Yeah, but and in that period, the little males come out as well, so they're stacked up together pretty good. But tidal run, when it's hard and fast, especially jumping pin, and it says really big tides, it's really good fishing on the high tide or the low tide, and the first hour either side. But once it starts to really run hard, the water just goes dirty, no matter how you've got subtly or whatever, because the tide's too big. And it all comes out of the Logan and whatever. It's crap. And it gets to the jumping pin within about 2 hours. So you've only got a 2 hour window to really fish hard in clean water. Then you've got to try and think, okay, well, the water's in all the channels are so dirty, where do I go? So then you get up on wherever you can find a drain in a bank, the water's always clean no matter how dirty it is around it. it's clean up on the banks. So you got a little channel like that there, it'll be crystal clear, and here's brown. That's where you got to go, because that's where they'll be. They might be on the edge of that feed if there's bait hiding in that dirty water. You have to go this side and cast. You just got to try and find the clean water. And it doesn't matter if the drain's only as wide as this room or even half as wide as this room and that deep, the flatties will be stacked in there, I can tell you that now. Yeah.
And generally that like clearer water is a degree, maybe half a degree cooler. And they like that cooler water as well.
They do,
You know,
yeah.
Might not seem like a lot, but half a degree, like from here to there, is a lot. So they'll be in that cleaner stuff.
So, okay, I'm going to think. Okay, so it's low tide in the morning. I don't need much weight on my jig heads. I like to use a sort of like the one that's going around now, which is like a 2.25 ounce in that scenario on the no run tide, or even 1/8 of an ounce. There's actually a lure here I'll pass around now. Unfortunately, this is a prototype. We've got other colours in it. This one will be back in next week, hopefully. Maybe tomorrow.
Fingers crossed.
But this one here I caught 16 flatties on the other day without losing it. I couldn't believe it. And I switched the hook everywhere around it, and it's a very small hook, but I got fish to 60 centimetres on it, and I was just trying something different with small hooks and light jig heads, and it absolutely smacked them. I had another jig head too, which is the fused one, which I think you guys might have got in your bag, but I lost it because we went tailor fishing and bit it off, and that was one I caught most of the fish on actually, so this one caught quite a few too. See how many fish you can catch on one soft plastic, but what I'm getting at is that that's how small you can go on the high or the low tide when it's not running it much at all, okay?
And what sort of depth would you be in?
On that, they're up to about probably, on that no current situation or not much current situation, maybe 2 or 3 metres. But if there's a bit of current flowing, so, you know, reasonably fast, I'd use it up to about 1 metre deep or maybe 1.5 metres. But casting like 20 or 30 metres up current and just hopping it back. The thing you need to learn, guys, is I do my technique, I'll show you on this video, is a bit different to everyone else's. Stewie's different technique. So everyone has their favourite technique, right? A different way of doing it. My technique way is to cast it up, take it slack. As soon as it hits the bottom, you watch the line. You've got to watch your line the whole time you're fishing. It's the most important part. You'll see the bite every time. You see the line go tink tink. That's the bite. They swallow it down, whatever it might be. But that's all it is. Or you'll feel it, of course. But cast up, take it slack, and then I just lift it right up and up and up and up. And so yeah, so I'll just do like that. But because the current's coming at you quite fast, so between shallow water and strong current, I actually keep lifting it up. So I keep moving it. So I've done like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm nearly high sticking it right up. When it's windy, don't do that because you get wrapped around the tip if the wind's coming towards you. Stop it about here. But in this situation, I'm going right up. And then what I do is, as I go down, I flick the handle and it's by itself. I don't hold the right handle at all. Everybody does Stewie's way, which is ding, 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 and then they'll take up the slack.
I always hold the reel.
But just do something at home, right? When you get a chance, make sure it's daytime. Cast out your soft plastic, right? And watch this. Just cast it like 6 metres. Do the ding, ding, ding thing up. You'll see it move, move, move. Imagine the current's running. So the reason why I'm going a bit higher is I'm constantly moving it down. So anything comes along that's going to chase it and want it. And then just quickly flick your reel like that as you go down, and you'll see it like you've done the dun, 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 and then you turn the handle, and it's actually kept momentum and bounced about that far, right? And then straight away I'm doing the dun, dun, dun again, right? Because it's already taken the slack up. So my lure never ever stops. But when you do the dun, dun, dun up and do this again, cast it out, dun, dun, up, and then when you drop it back down and take one slack, it stops, it hits the bottom, and then you do the same again. But mine's moving all the time, and I don't know, it seems to work for me. Try it at home, okay? Try it.
It's quite an odd action, but it works.
It doesn't work?
Yeah, it does, yeah. And, he done me by one fish the other day, and that was only because I caught a stingray. Didn't help, wasn't a team player, But I had to net it myself, take the hook out. He ran to the other end because he's scared of it. And,
No, I didn't do that.
beat me by one.
I thought it's catch up time. So it was 11-3. He was 11, I was 3 because I was trying all new lures, and that was the truth.
I was trying new ones too, but my new ones were better than Doug's new ones.
Yeah,
But anyway,
okay.
yeah.
Anyhow, so and the next minute was like 14 all. So it was like because I found the spot that technique worked really well, and it works extremely good when you get the right situation, which is the current coming towards you, and not too deep water. But anyhow, get back to so. Okay, we know it's southeast blowing, and we've got running tide. So part of the tide is real small. As the tide starts to get a bit faster and the wind's coming up a bit more, I'll flick my lures up to probably a 2.0 or 3.0 quarter or 3/8 in the middle of the tide, but it's ripping, okay? And I'm fishing water up to say, the channel here might be 3 metres deep or 4 metres deep. And I'm casting up onto the bank, up current and hopping it back out again. As the tides sort of say that spot there's going to be quiet, I want to go fish the deep because it's coming at the high tide, and it's sort of like 10, 11 o'clock during the day. Then when I first get the currents, it always seems to go for a long time right to the death knock in the deep. The current just keeps running, and all of a sudden it stops, and the next minute it's gone out again. Where when you're up in this area, it seems to dawdle for 2 hours. You have a bit more time to play around on the shallows or go up on the bank and cast around. Is that right, Stu?
100%.
Yeah,
There's definitely delay
So-
up in this shallow stuff.
So I might fish like 3/4. That's one coming around now, and I'm using a bigger plastic. So I've gone from small plastics, and one of my favourite plastics at the moment are these boom baits. I've been smacking on these. I'll just pass a couple around. You can have a look. That shrimp that's going around now, we've got them in a couple of colours at the moment. And my number one go-to, and always is my favourite, my survival plastic I call it, if I had to survive in flatties, that's only species of fish in the ocean, would be the 3-inch molting shrimp in the molting colour. But they're probably the go-to at the moment. So that's what I'm using in water up to, say, 4 metres deep. But if I was fishing the deep in that strong current, I'm going to use that Ted that's gone around before the 3/4 ounce, and I'll up the ante on the body of the lure to probably so Stu, you have your pick what's left.
Right.
Let me know if I've taken any of yours away. Something in one of these sort of sizes, which I'm trying to see through too. So that's in the deep fishing, like sort of 30 foot deep, with a 3/4 ounce sinker and a 4.0 or 5.0 hook. And
So
that's
it's
sort
very
of,
vertical wise.
yeah,
and,
vertical, yeah.
I think the biggest thing is with the bigger plastic in the deep, you're creating more of a presence. The fish aren't necessarily, they can be really schooled up, but you've got to cover more ground. You'll be drifting fairly fast, and I think it's more of an object for him to focus on.
Mm.
Like it's very hard for a decent sized fish or whatever to find a little 1-inch or 2-inch plastic in 30 foot of water. It's a lot of water. So, yeah, that's
So-
my general theory.
Has anyone here not used Gulp at all? Everyone, you haven't used Gulp at all? No? Anyone else not used Gulp? You haven't used it, mate? Okay, so Gulp's the second packet, that one there, mate. So it's a biodegradable product. It's made of food starch. Looks like rubber, but it's not rubber. And you have to keep it in the juice in the packet when you're not using it, otherwise it shrinks to about half or quarter the size, goes rock hard. And if you put salt water in there or any water into that packet, it just dissolves and becomes mush.
Yeah.
It's biodegradable. So you have to keep it in as its home, okay?
So when you pull him out of the water and put him away, you have to rinse him first?
No, don't do that, no. Just put him straight in there, mate. But
In
most
between spots, it's alright.
yeah, in
But
between
like at the
spots.
end of the
It'll
day-
shrink a little bit, but then you just drop it back in the juice and it comes back alive again, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
right.
But most guys will get like a little waterproof screwed lid container and put the juice in there, or they'll buy a 3-pack one. It's got the container, it's got a lot of juice in it, and keep them in the juice. All mixed together is fine. But the other plastics that are going around they do have some scents, but they don't have the scent and the power of getting a bite as S-Factors. Anyone here use S-Factor yet? For those of you who don't, you should use it. So S Factor's, we've got downstairs, I didn't bring it up to show you, but it's a product designed by a scientist in conjunction with John Dunphy, used to own Shimano down in Sydney. Oops. And he spent years designing this thing. It's based on pheromones, which is a thing that makes fish want to eat. It's like someone maybe holding a smorgasbord in front of us and thinking, oh, I'm going to eat it, I'm full of prawns or whatever it might be. So it makes them want to eat. So you put a little smear on your finger and you just rub it down the side and around the hook area of the plastic. I'm not saying you're burling up, but it's definitely, it doesn't smell, has no smell like burley. It's just, it's something that turns them on to eat. So anyhow, so any other plastic bar Gulp, I apply it to everything. And definitely, if I'm getting a fish and then I'm doing a few more casts and it's not happening, I'll put a bit of that on again, and next minute, straight away, I've got a fish. Okay? Yeah. And same with colours, you know, I know colours come into play as well, but the other day I said to Stuart, I was catching these fish on one of the colours, and then I switched to another colour, try another lure out while he's pulling them in, and got nothing for about 10 or 20 casts. Went back to the colour before, put a little bit of that stuff on again, threw it out. The other one had cut that stuff on too, but like, straight away, fish straight away. And I thought, it's colour definitely has something to do with it, and that's always something we always test every time we go out, and it definitely does. But generally speaking, the three main colours for flatties, I believe, are white is very good. Natural colours are very good, which is half those lures going around now. And green's a really good colour for flatties for some reason. I like green.
And pink.
And pink,
Yeah,
and
pink's
pink,
really
sorry,
good
pink,
too.
yeah, pink's good
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I only fish a real natural colour if the water's like crystal clean.
That's
no,
important too, yeah.
that's, yeah.
They have
If
their
it's
place.
dirty water, yeah, they have their place.
Yeah.
Every lure has its place. So if the water's really dirty, I'll fish like a really bright lure, or try to find clean water. And if it's really clean, I'll fish that natural, a brown or a translucent colour, and fish it slower and things like that.
So what about cloudy compared to sunny?
Yeah, that's a good question too. You know, we went fishing a couple of weeks ago, we got 25 that day. We got some in hard bodies straight up and the rest on plastics. And that day, it was peeing down rain, like absolutely.
Yeah.
It was darkest day and coldest day. And that day didn't matter. White, green, didn't matter, mate.
Yeah.
I think it's more the water clarity has to do with it. It's more important than the sun.
Yeah.
But I'm a true believer that you get more flatties when the sun's out rather than a dull day.
Yeah.
That day might have got 40s if it wasn't raining, I don't know. But they're definitely, they're sun worshippers, that's for sure,
Yeah.
or light worshippers. You know. As soon as it gets dark, you don't catch flathead unless it's near a street light or a bridge light or a jetty light.
Yeah.
You very rarely catch flathead on a bait or anything at night time, out in the dark, in the black.
Yeah.
But speaking about black, I'm sorry, black's also a great colour too, guys. My son in the Flatty Classic quite a while ago, back in about 98 I think, he got the biggest flathead in the Flatty Classic. It was 98 centimetres, and he got that on a black lure, fishing in clear water. So it throws away all the things we just said. But that's the truth. Yeah. So quite a few people do black lures too.
There's a lot of theories. They reckon that fish don't see colours; they see like shapes and or UV colours or anything like that. But the other day, that threw that out the water when we changed lures and they were biting on a certain colour. But black, it's always just got that silhouette, so it will stand out.
They see it, but
Yeah.
because flathead look up, they don't look that way so much. They look more up that way, and that's just the way they feed. And obviously, they see the black and the light. It stands out quite easy in clear water. And that was actually in very clear water that he was using it. But we say use translucent colours in clear water, so it's on the day, I think, on the day. But if you've got bait fish around, then like natural colours, like that type of thing, there is really good. You've got bait fish around, mate? So just to give you an idea, your paddle tails, this is important too, guys. Your paddle tails are ones that you're going to do either very light action on, not too much roll, not too much lifting, just a light little action, because The Flathead definitely the last 2 years are gone away a bit from the type lift. They don't want to know about it. Occasionally they do, but not very often. Now it's more of a lighter jig head, where before I used to use only half ounce. It's half ounce or half ounce, simple. Didn't matter if I was in that deep or 6 metres. But now I use 1/6, 1/8, 1/4. You know? And the action's gone from the lift up to a slow lift with a lot of lifts, or just a little roll, you don't have to go far off the bottom, just using your wrist and not even your arm to lift it. Just the wrist lift, which doesn't go very far. And then dropping it and waiting even a bit before. Sometimes we hop straight away like that, but now lift it and then just wait, and then lift it again. And a lot of time they're just sitting on it. So the techniques change. I don't know about you, Stuart, that's what I found.
Yeah, I've slowed it right down. I used to be really hard and really fast, but I've slowed it right down. And you get in, it's still an aggressive bite, but it's not as aggressive as it used to be. Yeah. Yeah.
So
my hard bodies I still work really fast, really
Yeah.
hard, but yeah, all the plastics I've slowed right down.
So your paddle tails, that's the technique you're using, but when you're using like a grub like the one I just passed around now, or any of your longer tail sort of grubs, or that big gulp going around the nemesis, that type of one you need to do the lift up fairly high, because you need to get fairly high off the bottom, because when it goes back down that curly tail stretches right out and the bait becomes really big, and that's what they seem to like, that bigger style, you know. And you fish in the deep more with that style, or the bigger paddle tail with the longer tail, like the hollow bellies or this type of thing here. The tail is very long, so it's more or less like that stretched out tail, but it's got more of an action on the bottom of it. So long tails are really good for deep water, and we get guys use that Mr. Twister style, or just a standard grub style, and do really well in the shallows too. But they're tending to do a little bit of a wiggle and then winding it for about 2 or 3 turns, and winding it towards them, and it stretches out and wiggles on the wind. That makes sense. It's just off the bottom, and they get hit sometimes on the wind. I got a few the other day actually on the wind, which I don't normally do. But generally you're hopping it and letting it sit, but yeah, that worked too. So I think you guys have got in your plastics, I think you've got a couple of different types there. Those little ones there, fuse, I think you've got some of those sort of things in your bag. They are kick butt for that little roll one, okay? And the bigger one is more of a lift up style. Anything you want to add to that, Stuart?
No, not really. I think, yeah, obviously a straight tail minnow I fish a lot quicker because you've got to put the action into it. Anything with a curl tail or paddle tail, slow it down. They do more of the action themselves.
So the prawns, the tail is very soft at the end. So when you do the flick up, this flicks quite aggressively because it's articulated in the joins, and that seems to really turn the flaties on as well. Actually, that one was really good one, that pink one. But any of the prawn type lures that you get, like the Xeric and the Samaki ones, are really good. Okay, those prawn types. Stu was getting heaps of those the other day.
My theory on a prawn butt is you always rig it head first, like standard rigging. How often do you see a prawn going really quick forwards? Never. So you slow it right down. They never flick, they never jump around. If they're going to do that, they're going to do it backwards. And I don't know how many people have seen prawns swimming, but mate, they're like dead straight and all their little legs are going, and that's about it. But
that's why I like gulp prawns. Gulp prawns have no action. They just,
Not at all.
but they glide like a prawn. That's why they work so well, I think. Yeah, and that new power bait does the same thing.
Yeah.
Any questions on those on the plastics at all, guys? No? Okay. Just want to quickly tell you about Vibes, because they are soft plastics, or Vibes are another thing that's really good as well, and work. Leonard Steele was talking about it before. There's a little vibe
they
you had
do
on
them all
there.
in different shapes, different sizes.
I think you guys have got 2 sizes in your bag, but give them both a go. The little one definitely use that up to about 2 metres deep in the shallows. The bigger one use that anywhere from, again, shallow, but more that sort of 2 to 6 metres. They're really good.
Any technique with those guys?
Yeah, technique with those. So I find you've got to keep them moving the whole time. You've got to keep it moving. You can't let it pause. and plus it gets stuck in the weed. So I'm sort of twitching it and working it the whole time and just winding it in. Just wind it slowly, do more twitching, but keeping the weight so it's actually going like through the water. Some guys sit there lifting right up and then drop it back down and soothe it back down again. In the deep especially, guys, and they get fish that way too, but that's not my style. My style is more a technique of moving it along the bottom. Yeah, it's a little bit of a hop.
Just a question on this little vibe.
Yes,
It's got a split ring on it.
yes.
Will you use that or take it off and put a loop knot on?
Okay, that's a good question. If my lead was really light, I'd take it off
Yeah.
because it'll get caught in the groove. But if my lead is like 12 to 16 pound, I'd leave it on there.
Yeah.
Or you put one of those fast attach clips onto it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But good question. Yeah, split rings on light line don't work. We all know that it gets caught up. It's a pain in the back, so you lose too many good fish because the line comes out of the loop. So yeah, it's probably better designed with some sort of snap on there, like that fast attach type system, or take it off and tie a loop knot. So Stuart doesn't tie loop knots, I do.
I
Okay.
hate loop knots.
You'll see it's
Worst
a
thing
loop,
ever.
that little soft plastic going around the
Yeah.
worn out one. It's got a loop knot on it. Okay,
Yeah.
and it survived 16 fish.
Yeah. I still reckon the loop knot is the worst invention ever. On a hard body, I think it's really, really good.
Yeah.
More action, the lure swims itself. But
Yeah.
jigging soft plastics all day, you're slack tight all the time, and it wears that loop down because it's like that the whole time. And I've cast them off and lost fish because of that. And we were out fishing the other day, and I said to Doug, I threw,
That's
and
true.
the lure kept going, and
Yeah.
I said that's why, and that was. It
Yeah.
was a perfect break,
Yeah.
right in the middle.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But you should check your line every fish. Check it.
yeah.
Like I always, where we were that day at the end, they were only small fish up to maybe 50 or 60. But I took the chance and never lost it. I was lucky.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
but if I get a good fish on and I know it's down its gut, I'm going to check it straight away. And I usually just grab it and pull it with a snap, so I'll quickly tie down the knot. Okay.
How light are you not using a split ring?
What, sorry.
How light are you going with?
With the split ring, maybe no more than 10 pound. No, less than 10 pounds, sorry,
Yeah.
or 12 pound if you tie them to the split ring. Yeah, but probably the split ring you're better off tying a direct knot, like a uni knot, and not a loop knot, if that's any help to you, mate. Yeah, because the ring's going to be enough action anyhow. Yeah. Okay, so we covered jig heads and we covered soft plastic. You want to talk about any soft plastics history?
No, not really. Yeah, obviously just the action. If it's got lots of curl tail or paddle tail, work it slower.
Do you want to show them the direction?
Uh,
Actually, we've got a video to show you
Yeah,
a bit later.
we'll show you,
Show
yeah.
the video. Yeah. Jig heads. Okay, I haven't brought up this. Is it football jig heads?
There's football head jig heads down under the counter.
Yeah,
we'll show
we've
you
got to bring 'em
on the
up,
way
sorry.
out, but yeah.
So there's jig heads of all different shapes and sizes, but generally speaking, the best jig head is the one that sits hook up.
Yeah.
Okay, so it hooks up like that, and that's how it sits, not folded over like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So,
So-
like all of these, a generic style jig head it can sit hook up. Depends on what plastic it's on, obviously. If it's a really buoyant plastic, it'll hold it up.
Mm.
But like a Z-Man or the boom baits and stuff, because they do float. However, if it's on like a Gulp or a like any of the Storm stuff, they all do sink, and the jig head might lay on its side or underneath or wherever.
Mm.
Whereas the football head, the design of it is, as Doug said, so the hook's always facing upwards, and the idea is like a flathead inhales it, and the hook's ready to go. When you feel it or whatever, you can set that hook straight away. It's straight in that topper drawer, like upper drawer. Whereas on a standard jig head, you might fight it and you think that you've set the hook, and then it'll open its mouth, maybe beside the boat, and it'll just come flying out. It's because the jig head's that way, and it's just bit onto it. It hasn't had the chance
Have
to.
you guys felt that before?
Yeah.
Where it just falls off, sort of thing.
Like you might get 20 winds on it and it goes for a run and you turn it and you think it's all sweet and then that's it, it's all over.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, there's applications for football jig heads,
There
and
is.
that's most of the time. Use them, but in some of the deeper water, I don't use them, and in the that's about the time I don't use them is in the deep water actually. Everywhere else I do use them, all that sort of style that'll make them sit up, and that's like Stu was saying, a lot of time you lift up and then you drop it, I do this wind and I feel like a dunk, and that's because one's grabbed it, and straight away as soon as I go like that, it's straight in here. If I'm using a standard style hook, and I do that sometimes, unless it's one of the ones that Stuart said sit up, I'll do it like that, and I'll have it on and then it'll just fall off. And I'm thinking, I don't know why. So that's the difference between getting a few extra fish a day.
If you're just holding your reel, or you're not holding it actually, when you feel that strike, how much drag have you got set?
Very tight. Line is very tight, except when I'm trolling, Bill. So when you're trolling, you use a very light line, and they're normally big girls up in the flats, so when you get one on, it's generally good fish, and it'll inhale that little lure and does a lot of head shakes. If you've got too tight of a drag on, it's like holding, when you hold something tight, it's very easy to cut it, right?
Yeah.
But when it's loose, it just goes with the flow. It's quite hard to cut. So that's why you fish a light drag when you're fishing a light line. When you're fishing heavy line or anything around 10 or 15 pounds, you can have a feel of a drag later, but it's set quite tight. Like grab it and pull it, it's tight.
Yeah.
It's not going to snap, but it's going to, when I go like that, because a lot of time you guys might have experienced it when you go dunk, 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 and you get a hit, you go out and it goes, it's too light. Simple as that. You want to feel like you're snagged up. That's the right setting. Okay. Very important that too, but a good point. Very important. Okay, tools. Some of the tools we use. These things are great for jig heads. These are, I'll pass this around. They're expensive, but they're that really good plastic stuff.
Yeah, it's real high density foam in it, and they've
Yeah.
got slits in it, so you don't pierce it or anything. You just sit your jig heads in it.
See, jig head's a little too big. It's
Yeah.
easy to find what you're doing.
Yeah. Paint doesn't fall off because they're not all banging it against each other in a box. And they're a good invention.
And they come in different sizes, but that's one thing. Very important tools. Some guys say, you shouldn't use lip grips on flatties because you're going to let them go. I keep enough flatties for a feed generally on flathead fishing because I like eating flatties. It's up to you guys if you keep them or not. But I'd much rather grab a fish in and out here with these lip grips are fairly aggressive, but they work. But your other lip grips go downstairs. They just, you know how lip grips work? So flatties have those 2 spikes, or 4 spikes, 2 on either side, on the sides. And every time you try and grab it, they do the flick, and they can see it, and they try to impale you in your hand somewhere. And they're pretty good at doing it, actually. But if you grab them in the mouth, it's even worse because they've got inside their mouth, they've got another set of pincher teeth. And when you grab that and they shake it, it just rips straight down to like your 4 layers of skin, especially if it's a decent one. So lip grips enable you to grab it in the mouth on the bottom part of the mouth, got that like a little indentation there, designed for it, I reckon. And you just lock it in, it locks on, and then you get the hook out and grab it underneath and let it go. But I believe if you don't have that, you're worried about the head. It knocks itself around more because it's shaking its head so much, and you're trying to get the thing out, and then you get a bit mad and you grab it too hard or whatever to try and get it out. I think you did more damage doing that than actually that in the mouth. That's what I believe. So lip grips, I believe, are good for flatties. I don't know what you used to it.
Yeah, always lip grips. Just easier. So if they're in the net, I just lip grip them straight away and pull them out and deal with it.
The hook out gun or a good pair of pliers is really important too. So to get those hooks out, especially if you're using trebles on flatties, and the little ones are the most spiky little buggers. Okay, they really give you a hard time. So the hook out gun, if I got a little fish that's not, I don't keep them under about 45 or 50, but and I keep them over sort of 60. That's about my limit, 60 or 45, if I'm going to eat them. And I just grab this and just grab the treble, and you just pull it and just turn it, and the fish just falls off the hook. And if they're set deep down its throat, you just go down, hold the line tight, you'll see the shank, and just grip on the shank and twist it out, and it just pops straight out. Really good tool. You can, as I said, bent nose pliers are good, but make sure you get bent nose, not straight pliers, okay? Other thing, make sure you get a pair of scissors. Nothing more frustrating than trying to cut braid and it's all fluffy and there's a big tail on it. Get rid of those crappy scissors and get yourself an alright pair. Brag mat. Hope hopefully you guys will be starting to use this now. I want to see some 90s on the okay. 90 plus. Has anyone here caught a fish over 80 centimetres? Dave has? Anyone else? Gee whiz. Okay, Tommy has? Yeah, Flathead. Flathead, talking flatties. Yeah. 98. Okay, that's the same as me actually. 98.3. True actually. That's 3 metre. Yeah, no, that's my biggest. I caught 10 over 90 now, so yeah. But that's over a lot of years of fishing. But I haven't seen a metre one yet. Seen them photos down south, but I haven't seen one here yet.
If you're going to eat them, do you
Yes.
brain spike them?
I don't. I'll generally either put them in a live well so they're fresh and they keep swimming around, or I'll put them straight into ice and cut their throat. Yeah.
You saw it though.
Sorry, mate.
You seen it?
Seen the brain spike
No, the 98.
of yours?
Yeah.
I think I have.
You were in the Frank Street shop.
Oh yes, I did see it. That's right. Yeah, I did. Sorry, it's 20 years ago though. Yeah, yeah.
Getting back to that question, but I always brain spike them. If
Do
I
you?
brain spike, I bleed it straight on ice.
Yeah, I definitely did it.
I think it makes a lot of a difference.
Like to me, flatties got really good flesh anyhow. So, yeah. Flatties very good sashimi too, guys. So you know that in Japan it's very expensive in a shop to buy sashimi flatty. Very good. Try it. Very good.
In what?
Yeah.
Have you ever smoked one?
No,
No.
that I haven't done. No. No.
I think it's really a tailor thing, isn't it?
It's an oily fish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Flatty has a fair bit of oil actually, but not like tail or mackerel or something like that. Yeah.
In my eyes, fire was invented for a reason, so you cook it. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, you don't like sashimi, yeah?
No.
No. Okay. Okay. We're going to show you UV. I don't know how much this is UV, but a fair bit of it is just looking here. So I'm just going to turn the. If you don't mind, to turn the light set there. Dave, do you mind to turn out the lights, please? Oh, sorry, just there. You can turn that one out too, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll turn out this one here. Sorry, guys, on there. Just to let the people know who are watching on YouTube here, we do concentrate mainly on the people that are in the crowd. So sorry about that, guys. But we will be doing a different format for you guys a little bit later, which I'll let you know about one day. Okay, so I've got that light on. That's okay.
That's right.
You got the light there, Stu? Or is that? So some of these are globe ones as well.
So UV is a theory that everyone reckons that fish see UV stuff.
So-
It doesn't make a difference. Some days it does.
So I'll just show a non-UV one. So non-UV just comes up like so, right? It doesn't change much at all. So UV highlights, so it makes it emphasise. Can you see that? So it's a lot brighter. So we don't see that, but the fish see it that way, supposedly. I don't know who asked the fish, but someone must have.
Yeah, someone spent a lot of money to figure that out.
But when you get to UV colours, it just enhances it massively. That's green. But hold up on that, and there's no difference at all. So it's on certain products, that one is UV as well. So
Like, I feel sorry. Flatty must think it's in a nightclub during Flatty Classic, but in each of their own. I think
yeah,
they're pretty.
so the ones you got are UV as well in your bucket, in your bag.
And some jig heads are too,
yeah.
so it all makes a difference.
These fused jig heads are a really good product. We used to do Tackle World, but for some reason Tackle World dumped them, which really peed me off. But anyhow, great product. Everyone run out of lures, chuck your scissors over. There you be. But yeah, no, it's just it's a different. Thanks for doing that. Thanks, mate. It's a different way of again looking at your lures and thinking, okay, I know that one's UV. Maybe I'll try that because the other stuff's not working. And that's all the little things that make it just that bit better of a day for fishing, is understanding every little possibility that you have to make it better. Okay. Anything else, Stuart?
It's about pretty much covered.
Okay, we're going to talk now about spots. So any questions on all the gear, guys? This is the gear. Maybe I'll tell you how to do it. Where to go. We sort of showed you there, but we'll do the
I'll get the
video going. Yeah, we'll get the screen going. We'll move Stuart's rods here. So just to give you some idea, like one of my rods there, I know the rod's expensive, but the reel's not. But I don't mind using, you don't have to go really flash gear. I'd like to see a flash gear, but for flatty fishing, $150 combo is going to do the job as good as a $1,000 combo. Okay, they're not. they're not. Oh, they're not going to do quite a good job at it. But something like that, which we sell for about $149, spooled up with Japanese braid, I reckon I could catch the same amount of flathead on that as I would on my $1,000 rod there, you know, my $800 rod. But it's not as nice to use, but it'll do the job right. Okay. This is the Shimano combo. Oh, sorry. So, okay, so you got the map in your bags, guys. So in the scenario here, we're talking jumping pin on this side and the broadboard on this side here. And here we're talking about from Crusoe Island down to Tippler's area, I think, is it?
Yeah, it's down to about Korean Cove.
Oh, is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
Korean Cove, yeah. So all the marks marked in red are where we 100% fish, okay? And they all have drains running off them, most of them do anyhow. So this spot here, there's a drain runs off this bank here. This is called Shitter's Ditch, there's a drain runs out there. We fish on the drains, okay? The drains are like the little creeks I was talking about in the scenario. Over here you get the drain runs out of the bedroom. Over here you get the drain comes out of that creek there at the mouth of Wally's Gutter. Here we're fishing, oh okay, that's where you go into the bedroom, so they sit just on that edge amongst those reds there. Here's like up in a basin, so that's the trolling spot actually, but not so much a casting spot. But if you can find an area that has all weed, and say at high tide it's 1 metre deep or 1.5 metres deep, but you find an area about the size of this room that's sand, that's where they'll be on that sand patch. One, it's easy for you to fish it because you don't get much weed on your line. And two is, they're sitting right on the edge of that weed, waiting for anything to come over it, out of it, and they'll just nail it. So you can drift and cast those areas or you troll those areas. Here, you've got those little drains run out off that big bank there. That's where the neverfails are. And that's the measured mile here. And yeah, drain there, drain there, drain there. So, and that's the drain, that's opposite Tippler's campground, and that drain runs out there on the run-in tide, or runs out of there on the run-out tide on that edge. So it's all drains, that's what we fish, it's the best areas. Any questions on that at all? So do you all know that sort of area? Yeah, good, cool. Okay, broadwater here, this is from sort of all the shots up here, that's Sovereign, all the way down to, that's where the end of the wall is on the north wall. So I really like this whole edge along here, all the way up to actually the North Curragee campgrounds. So when the tide's running in, the tide runs through this here, drops over the edges, this edge's bank here. That's that shortcut you go behind the island to Tippler's or up the pin, if you all know where that is. And you fish along that edge there, and that's a really good spot. Along this area here, all just drifting away along there, it's quite deep, quite quick. Drops down about 6 metres, and they're working on that edge. So when the tide's high, I'm casting right up on the edge, and when the tide starts to get low, I'm fishing the deep, drifting the deep. And someone asked before about do you cast, always to that side. I do cast out the abyss, into the abyss sometimes, into the deep, and sometimes they're out there, they're feeding on bait out there or whatever it might be. And unless I've got my sounder and looking for bait, I don't know that's out there, but I'll just do like a pump cast and try it and say, oh, I'm on, and next minute, we'll start casting that side of the boat and start catching them again. So, experiment. In Browns Bay, has anyone been there before? Browns Bay is a good spot to troll and to cast. Particularly on the high tide. Okay. Down where the bottom end of Browns Bay River comes out here, it's a great spot on the run-out tide. The tide comes out here, the flatties go through there, and they drop into that area, exactly like dropping into here. It's the same scenario. And they sit on that edge there, where it drops down from sort of, 0.5 metre to about 2 metres. And they're up on the flat too. Once it gets too low, they drop into deep water. So you cast that area and run out tide, It's a run out tide spot, and up there a bit further is really good too. That area up there is similar scenario to that there. So they're all on the front there. Once the tide starts to get too shallow, they drop out of that little bay and they sit on this edge here, which is that edge there. Korean Cove, Kurraji, between North Kurraji Campground and South Kurraji Campground, that whole edge there is a really good edge to cast and to troll and fish as well. Over at Little Crab Islands here, opposite Kurraji Campground, that whole area there is a really good area to fish on the run out tide. So the water drains there, there's this drain here, there's another one there, and they just sit on that flat, and once it gets a bit shallow, they drop into the edge of the weed right on the edge of the channel there, and that's where you get them. Up here, this area here, when the tide's coming in, you got a red, you got the little crab there, you got red there, then it goes over this side of the channel, goes over this way, and there's that shelly beach along there, and then there's a little channel in there, another little, we call it a drain, and when the tide comes in, it goes through, goes over here, through here, because this bank's out, so it goes that way or that way, and it flows into that little drain there. And again, when you'll see the ripples, and fish the ripples too. Witches' hats are over the side. I'll get to those. But this is on the eastern side, Bill, on the eastern side. The little crab, that's the little crab there. The big shallow beach here. But it drains through there and you fish there because they're coming in, they're all stacked there waiting to get up onto that flat, and that's where you get them there. Where you're talking about, mate, it's the channel between the two crab islands, the big one and the little one. That's Rhino Bay Marina over here. So that's down through there. It's always been good fishing, right up close to the island as well. But where the Witch's Hat is, just south of it. So from the Witch's Hat to about 200 metres south to near the little island, there's a little island next to that bigger island. That's a really good drift, and there's good weed clumps all the way through there. And there's good weed clumps on the other side over here too. Yeah. Pheromone Island's a great area too. Same again, got that little drain on the front side. There's a little drain there on the front side of Pheromone Island, on the south side. And when the tide comes in, it rips through there, it drops into these big weed clumps on the other side. There's a green just near there. And just drifting around that area is really good too. So that way you can go there in a kayak. You know. Great fishing there. Much better than that fishing there than around the inside crab on the west side. And the other side of Pheromone Island there is good too, guys. Where the red is. Does that all make sense? Yeah. So there are a few spots to try, but just use that technique, that thinking, and you'll catch fish. Okay, there's seriously, there's hundreds of drains and sandbanks between here and Jumping Pin that you guys can fish that all produce fish.
Just a question on
Yes.
tactics.
Yes.
Say for this Flathead Classic, you can get the blokes like go up the Jumping Pin with their boat, take a canoe, then jump in the canoe and fish all the shallow stuff under the
I don't know about doing the classic style, but at times a lot of guys do, like even around here, it's always shallow to get into a lot of these little creeks, but you don't get many flathead in those real little creeks.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know why, I understood, I don't know.
No, I never really have.
No,
I've always been in
they'll
that.
be at the entrance
in the
where the wider part where it comes out,
Okay.
but not up the creek so much. You'll get little jacks and bream and stuff like that.
Okay. Do you always stay in the boat, or do you sometimes get out of the boat?
That's a good question too, and I have got off the bank and fished the bank sometimes, but not the Flathead Classic, but in general times I have, but only because it's a similar scenario to that. The opening might be right up there, and I'm here, so I might as well cross it, and the water's draining into a drain or something, and I walk up the cast there, and generally get fish too, but you got to get them back to the boat. But definitely done that. One of the best spots I fished for land-based flathead fishing was over at Morton Island in September, around now actually. A place called Shark Spit, which is just down from the Sandhills, the Cinder Bay, Shark Spit there, on that corner, and fishing there, we absolutely caught, I don't know, 60 fish maybe, all 600, 700 size. Yeah. High tide about 8 o'clock in the morning. High tide. Yeah. They're right up in the shallow, up the edge of the bank. But any questions on that at all, guys? No? Okay. What else, Stuart? We'll show the video.
Video, yeah.
So the video is just plain Jones. There's no real big fish. Oh, there is on the when we went hard body fishing, but not on the soft plastics. And believe it or not, the other day we didn't take any cameras, and we didn't take any GoPro stuff, and we caught shitloads. So I don't know. But you'll see my stupid technique here that I use. So I'm a bit aggressive there because the water's a bit deeper there. See how I just spin it like that? And it doesn't stop. That's quite different. But try it, if you don't mind. The only thing is when you hook up, you got to know where the handle is. Otherwise you grab nothing. So you need to know where it is. So you can see Stewie's technique in the background there. He's holding the handle the whole time. So you're using the shrimp there, Stewie, or a... I'm using one of those.
One of the fused ones.
Yeah, one of the fused ones, yeah.
What sort of depth of water are you in there?
I was saying, but actually,
About a
it's a different
metre.
spot actually. It's only about a metre. Yeah, it's too quick to turn my reel.
Yeah.
It's very quick.
It's
So
not sinking very far before
no,
you start.
that's right. You must make sure the line's always on the bottom. It's 100% thing. If you got the current running, it's very important too, guys. If you got the current, say, coming in this way, and this is your boat facing into the current, and you've got quite a strong current, and you want to work the bottom, you need to cast up. If you've got no wind to stall you, you need to cast up as far as you can as the wind gets stronger. Does that make sense? To stall you. So less stall, you can cast at that angle sort of thing and hop it back, because once it goes past the boat, it won't touch the bottom. Even if you've got heavy jiggers, it doesn't get to the bottom. It's just the way it is. But if you've got wind that's stalling you and you're not drifting much, then you'll need to cast even further because the tide's going to come back really quick. So as you start to drift with it, your angle from cast can be from straight ahead to that way, probably about that angle at the most down, if you've got wind blowing either with the current or not much wind. Actually, sometimes when the wind's blowing with the current, you actually got to cast down current, because it'll take up pretty quick. The boat will overtake you. So I think, where it is? This is over at Tipplers.
Yeah.
So we fished a big flat here. We're doing exactly what I said about before, looking for sand patches in the weed and casting the sand patches. I think we might, is there much else in that one? Just go up to up here a bit further. Oh, I might be trolling up there. It's just more to show the technique we use, or the
If you come
difference.
across a heap of snotweed, do you move spots?
Yeah,
Yeah.
generally, because they don't like snotweed. So if you get that snotweed on your line, that's that really oozy stuff. Get out of there, because it's just going to be there all the time. When you're trolling, you can't do much about it because you're covering more ground. You've got to keep taking off the line. I'll steer
I just thought I'd show you this part because I'll catch a fish and Doug doesn't.
Oh,
It's great.
Yeah.
They're just little fish, but you got to steer them around because that's only light gear, that one. So I think that rod there's got, I think I've got 3 pound, about 10 pound leader. It wasn't a bad fish.
It's not too bad.
Yeah. And I'll lift a lot of fish in, but
It is always fishing.
yeah, up to about 65 I'll lift them, and then I'll net them after that because it's quicker. But you've got to know how to lift fish, because you can break any rod in the world. You can break if you lift it wrong, get a high stick it or anything. But yeah, so not advisable, but it's quick. And you lose the odd one, but not many. Yeah.
Okay, there's another video there, mate. It's on, I don't want to see your fish, sorry. It's on the YouTube one, I think. Yeah. So some of you might have already seen this, but we'll just show it real quickly. There is sound, but we won't play the sound. We'll just tell you about it because Stewie's bragging all the time.
All the time.
That, so it's just going to show you his lift technique here. So you
So
can
this-
see the hooks up in the top of the mouth there, guys. Yeah, same.
Yeah, so this fish is like 62, something like that.
58, I think.
It was 60 something. I definitely remember it was 60 something. And you just kind of have them scooting in and then you just rip them up. Actually, it might have been 58, maybe.
There was.
Yeah, well,
You can tell by the size.
see next one.
Shoes,
Massive foot.
shoes got size 15 feet, so. That one's on a easy shrimp by Gulp, up by
Z-Man.
Z-Man, if you got
Yeah.
downstairs.
Yeah. Just on a 1/4 ounce head. It's just on a standard jig head because they run the headlock system. So it's a lot better with a Z-Man plastic to run that headlock jig head just because it's a lot softer material. And so lip grip straight in. I don't use pliers, I just use pans. Yeah.
See how small his jig head is? Very small. Falling over watching this.
Yeah, I know, it's a bit rocky. Yeah.
$58.
58.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they always look small in the photos, but they're not bad size, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good size to eat, guys. Eh? So that's another one here, is it, Stuart?
That's another one. So that's on one of the little fused plastics. And that we used like that, similar to that little orange head that Dougie had on that new power bait shrimp. It's a Ned lock, so it's a very blunt face, and they kind of jump up quite high. Because if you could imagine, if you're pulling a blunt object through the water, its natural instinct would be to lift. It's not going to go forwards, so it's quite a. It
But
jumps quite high.
They work very similar to the football jig head. They
Very-
sit upright as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, football jig heads are hard to beat. That's why I like them so much. But I can only here to show you, but they're downstairs.
One you do. What would
Yeah.
I like that, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a big one actually. Yeah, I'll take that, pass it around.
So over your time, what's worked better, the top of the tide or the bottom?
My favourite tide, if I had like say a 2 hour window to fish in a day, would be the last hour, the run out, the first hour, the run in.
And bottom.
100%. Yeah, I really like. I like the last 2 hours of outgoing and like the first half hour of the incoming. That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's when they seem to be most active and the easiest to catch. The hardest time to catch fish, Phil, is on the after about the second hour of the run-in tide to about the 5th hour of the run-in tide. It's very hard.
It's because the fish can be way up on the flat, but you can't get up there.
That's half the classic every year.
It is hard to classic
Especially
every
this
year.
This
It's this
like
year.
crap.
Again.
Well, all those major bite times, I forget the site, is it Fishing Reminder? Fishing
Yeah,
Reminder.
so-
The major bites are always 2 hours after the top.
100%. That's right. That's your best bite time. So, if you're fishing like a tide, a full tide, you'd fish the whole run out and the first hour of the run in. That's a really good tide. So you got the high, you get up on the flat, so you know where they are and you catch them. And then you get a little bit of movement for the first hour of the run out. And then once it gets in about the second or third hour of the run out and starts running, that's when they start dropping into smaller areas and they get more condensed in one area and they become easy to catch. And towards the bottom of the tide, the last hour or two of the run out, they're really condensed and really easy to catch. And then once the tide starts to come in, they're at all these spots hold up, ready to go back over again, and they're easy to catch again because they're all together, packed up, you know. And then once the tide starts coming in, then they just go pyong for 4 hours. And you can't do much. You probably troll around, covers the ground, try and find some. Yeah. So guys, any questions at all? Yes.
Just, sometimes you get a fair few hits, but you don't hunt
Yep.
regularly. That seems to be happening.
So a couple of things there, Dave. One is make sure your drag's tight for a start. Not tight, but fairly tight to hook at the hook. Two is make sure always check the tip of your hook. Always check it. Got one little bend over, cut it off, get rid of it, put another one on. Really sharp. Second thing is, let's get drag at that. Secondly is, it could be what we talked about before, where your jig heads are rolling over and they're just grabbing it side on, they're not actually, and when you go to set the hook, it slides through. Where if it's sitting upright, it's generally a good setup. It gets hooked straight away. It's definitely, I'd say, I don't know, 5 times better to have a hook sitting up to get a fish than to have it lying on its side. And the 2 ways of doing that is, one is use football jig heads or use a floating soft plastic that floats. And just play around, chuck them in the pool and see their action is in the pool. If you've got a pool or clear water, and see if they sit upright, see if they float the hook up. If they do, they're a goer. They're definitely good plastic.
And the other thing is sometimes they just bite. They just
And
short
sometimes
bite.
they do
just
do-
bite the
yeah.
tail. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You try a different plastic or a smaller plastic, maybe something that they have to swallow. But yeah, you can put stinger hooks on them and stuff like that. We've all
Yeah.
tried that.
That's why I don't like using the grub style or the like Nemesis style, the long tail in shallow water. They tend to keep grabbing just the end part, and you feel the weight, but they just fall off. Yeah, you want it. The paddle tail is very short, and they tend to inhale the whole thing, and better hook up rate. Yeah, they were using Nemesis. Well, there you go. That's probably the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you get the tails bitten off too at the end, though. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So switch to paddle. Just in that area you're fishing, maybe. Obviously, as I said, I use the long tails in deeper water, but not so much in the shallow water. Anything over 2 metres, they're fine at 3 metres. But yeah, how deep water are you fishing, mate? Yeah, there you go. So get rid of that long tail. Yeah. Any other questions? Anything you want to ask us, please?
Do you ever catch anything else, bycatch?
You do, yeah, a lot of things. Tail, lots of tail at the moment. They don't bite you off. Lots of valley, a future valley. Brim, get some big brim.
You get the occasional snapper and stuff like squire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the big shallow stuff?
Even
the shallow stuff,
yeah,
yeah.
caught whiting as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, probably about it.
There's been some cobia caught in like Wally's cutter, like up the pin, like little ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A bit of everything.
The odd turtle.
Yeah, the odd turtle, yeah.
They go hard.
Yeah.
So many turtles around the moment. My gosh.
Stingrays. Yeah.
Yeah, stingrays. Yeah, it's true. The stingray the
A
other
lot of
day.
stingrays. Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
foul hook though, isn't it?
Yeah, inside and flat. Yeah. Any other questions, gentlemen? Come on, you must have some questions. I want you guys to really, you got to think how you're going to do it, guys. Think about the whole scenario. Look at the tides you got. Think at the best place. I know you got to fish the place to understand where you're going to fish, but you got some marks on there. So think about maybe the tides in that area.
Where are you going Wednesday morning, straight up?
Probably jumping pin.
It'd be north of Koran, I can guarantee that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I haven't looked. The tide's going to be
I think it's low
It's
tide about 8:30.
low about 8:30. So.
But the northerlies will dirty it up too, if they want.
I will. It's meant to be a bit more eastern on the Wednesday, and then swinging more north on the Thursday. The Friday's a hard north.
So maybe their first day turn down south.
Yeah, because Broadwater's always cleaner than jumping. Just so you know, the 2 guys.
Yeah.
They're
In
much
a northerly
cleaner.
wind.
In northerly wind, especially. Yeah. Yeah. So, look, I'd probably fish up around anywhere around maybe Tipler's area or something like that, or maybe back blocks of Tiger Mile. I like the back blocks around Cabbie Street area, that area. And then as the tide gets high late in the day, I'll probably end up out along Collingwood Bank there somewhere. Yeah. You'll see my boat.
We'll see up there.
Yeah. Yeah. So this year I fished with Stuart and my son Jack. This is Jack who parties every night, so he's going to be waking up. Anyhow, if he doesn't, at least he lets the team down.
That's it. Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're in a blue Hornet with Douglas tackle wheel written all over it, and just try to give us about 50 metres, please. That's about all we need. Yeah.
Hey, look, any other time, I don't mind you guys follow me around anytime you
Yeah.
want. You're welcome.
Yeah.
We probably won't go to the good spots I normally go to once they follow me, but we'll be around there somewhere.
And always just hang back a little bit because Doug likes shallow water and speed.
Has everyone seen my little tinny? It's got tackle wheel written size, a blue 4.8 metre Hornet, but anyhow, my mate's got the same boat. It's a 5 metre Hornet. and he's got E-Tech, he's got a 9175, but it's got the same wrap on it, which is a unique wrap, with Tackle World written all over it. He wants exactly the same, so it looks like my boat. So some Flathead classes, but this year he's not young, he need to be out there. He's not there this year for some reason, but he's normally out there, so everyone follows him. He's a decoy. It works well. But this year I won't have a decoy anyhow. I might do something different.
Have you ever fished jumping pin, say, a week after the classic?
I
Yeah,
did
it's still
last
not
year.
too bad. I don't know about Stu, but I get really, because you've been doing 3 days of hardcore fishing, you're really in tune with what's happening, you know. And so you just want to get straight back out there and do it again, you know. And you can't help yourself, and my wife doesn't like it anymore. But yeah, so 100%, and the fishing's still not too bad. It's still not too bad. Yeah, during the Flathead Classic, the Friday's always quieter. Although 2 years ago we come third on the Friday because we found a new spot, hadn't fished,
Yep.
and we just got heaps, got 800 points or something, 600 or 1,000 points. So yeah, it depends on if that area's been hammered hard. Yeah. This year there's less. I think it's still 150. They're trying to get 175 teams maybe, like 175 boats. That's a big comp.
Yeah.
And like when it's full blown and it's not COVID time and it's in the park, there's like up to 300 teams, you know, 300 boats. So, but that's why they do it on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to keep the weekend warriors away, because a lot of those spots you got your brim fishermen to sit there and anchor up and you're going to drift through there. So it's a bit painful. Yeah.
I fished the pin 2 days after the classic last year, and I caught still like 15 fish, and I got a tagged fish that I actually know the guy that tagged it. He's local on the Gold Coast, Brendan, and he tagged it. It was 28 days before I caught it, so it was 28 days in between the recapture, and it had grown a centimetre in that time. Yeah. It was fat as. It was over a spawning period, but they grow really quick. Yeah, but they still bite, like after that. I've let fish go, we've been on a real hot bite, and we've caught fish out of a drain, and in the end we'll catch a fish under the boat that we'd caught, and they already had holes in it.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. Different plastics, but yeah, you could drop a plastic down, jig it twice and catch fish. Yeah.
The other thing too is with the Flathead Classic is that the fishing is, as Stuart said earlier, that it's netted hard just prior to it for some reason. I know it's a good time for the flatties, but they normally turn up in the deep. It's funny every year, people who fish the Flathead Classic will know they're not there, but the day the Classic starts, all of a sudden they're in the deep. They just turn up on that day or the day before or whatever it might be. So hopefully they're right again this year, I don't know. But just the way it happens, eh?
Yeah, they're always bigger too.
Yeah, the big fish too, that's right. So, and we're just, from our customers and from us ourselves, we're just starting to catch them in the deep the last week. They've been a bit quiet. We've caught some good fish up in the flats. We got 188 and I've got a couple of 80s, 80 pluses. But we haven't got much in the deep, over 60. But the last week there's been a few 80s and whatever caught. So they come out of all the creeks and they just turn up and have a big fun time and they all disappear again. But they'll do that for about 2 months. Yeah, so September, October. Okay, right there, then we'll... Yes, sorry.
Cobby and slipping sands.
Yeah, they are very good. So Cobby Passage up the back there that goes around, comes out over near the power lines there. One of my favourite spots. There's a couple of scenarios like that there, but actually like that flows through between the back of Cobby, you know, where the passage is the back of Cobby there. That's a really good area there. And I love trolling there as well on the low tide. And I love casting that edge on those certain little areas like that on the bottom of the tide, the start of the run-in. So if you've got a tide at Cobby, it's got to be, if you're over on, say, Rocky Point side, over the back there between Rocky Point and Cabbage Tree Point, you fish that big bank on the high tide and then run out. And like, you know, the main big bank there between Rocky Point and Cabbage Tree Point. Does anyone know where that is? Yep. It's a great area for trolling there. Don't do much well casting there until the tide's low and that bank's too shallow and you cast the edge of it. Drops from about, my sounds in feet, about 2 feet down to about 8 or 12 and fish on that edge on the low tide. But in Cobby up in Cobby Passage. At the back side of it's really good on the low tide.
You got to watch out. There's so many green zones up around that area.
Yeah, there
Like,
is,
I think
yeah.
Cobby is a green zone itself from the low tide line up, so you can't fish like that real shallow stuff near the mangrove line on a high tide because it's all green zone.
Theoretically, you're going to cast to that edge.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
can't cast up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not well signed. It's not well marked or anything, but that's the rules. That's the way
I
it's
don't think you
written.
get out of your boat on that.
You can't get out of your boat
above
on
the
it.
low tide mark.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't put your boat up on it. So pretty, yeah. It's pretty
But it's a
protected
great
area.
fishing area.
It's a good area.
Mm.
Yeah.
Does it get much knotweed up there?
No, no, it's pretty good.
Out the
A little
front of
bit
it,
of
it gets real bad.
At the
but-
front, yeah, we call it Turtle Bank,
Yeah, but
which is opposite Slipping Sands sort of area, that area. Yeah. That, if you don't mind losing a bit of gear, a couple of good areas for fishing deep is Munez Road, which is over where the big boat's more up, right up close to the shoreline, just drifting there at this time of year is really good. We
they
call that
sit in
deep as
between
well.
the trees. It's like a death trap, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And the other area is where Cobby comes out on the east side, in that area, though. And you fish where Slipping Sands is from that, where it comes out all the way back down to Russell along that edge. There's a lot of snags there, but it's a bloody big fish there. Got 88 there a couple of years ago. Some big fish along that edge.
Yeah, it's on that big mud bank from like the little boat club thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Runs south.
Yeah, on
Yeah.
south, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't got that on the map here, but
You
that's a
lose
good
all
area.
the-
Yeah. Yeah. That may be where we might be in the focus.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
always big. There's not a lot of fish there, but they're generally pretty big.
Yeah, they get the numbers up, you know, the points get up pretty quick.
And in the deep stuff, you can fish like a lighter jig head hook because you're going to be using heavier line. So if you do get a snag, you can straighten it out. You get it back. You just got to manhandle it. But obviously, it weakens your hook, but you get it back.
Yeah, so if you get something,
Not every time, but
if you get something at the bottom, you know, the good thing is soft plastic and jig head's not as expensive as using a $20 vibe or something like that. So you don't want to lose those, but with these you can either just pop it off and put another one on, or you can quickly drive up onto it, and generally if you go past the snag it'll pop off most times. Yeah. Depends how much you try and pull it this way when you're going down the current and drive it in. You're better off just letting the line go loose and then drive straight back up and pop it off. Yeah.
tacklebacks work really good on a jig head too because it's straight on.
Yeah.
You can generally push it off. But,
Mm.
yeah. But how much time do you want to spend trying to get back
Yeah.
a $3 rig?
We got so many snags there last year, but we did do that reverse quickly over
First
Yeah.
quickly, yeah.
upstream.
Yeah.
It's got a lot, use the retriever and
Yeah.
didn't get it off, you know, and
Yeah.
we sort of gave up.
Yeah, normally about 7 out of 10 to get back then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you get them back.
Okay, the draw, guys. So everyone's happy? Everyone understands everything? I know it's a lot of information to take in, but some of you guys are probably good flathead fishermen, you know, but hopefully we helped you out a bit tonight. Thank you. Okay, we're going to do the draw. Okay, so everyone knows the seat number? Good. Good. So the first one's just over $300 worth of gear. So you can see what it is.
So
I haven't
number
got the board. I also have. Here we go.
number 9.
Number nine is Brian. Well done, Brian. Good on you, buddy. Come and grab this, mate. Yours. Thank you. Congratulations, mate. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Thanks, mate. Good on you, buddy. Okay. Number 2.
The second prize here goes to number 5.
Oh, close. Adam. Good on you, Adam. Good on you, buddy. Congratulations, mate. Cheers, mate. I think it's about 200 and something bucks worth there, mate. So it's a bit over $1,000 for the gear tonight, guys.
Number 6.
You're joking me.
Serious.
5, 6, 7. Okay, I'll draw the next 3, guys. Well done, mate. Good on you, mate. I'll pass the gear to you, my friend. Good on you, mate. So number 6 was Toby. Toby. Thanks, Toby. That's you, mate. That's about 100 and something bucks worth.
Oh, wow.
Cheers, mate. Good on you, mate. Okay. Sorry, Stuart.
That's all right, mate.
No, I'll give you one more
No,
go.
you go.
One more go. If you draw 8 or 3, you've got, or 4, you've gone. Go on out of the boat, that is. Not from
You wouldn't believe that. It's number 17.
17. Okay, number 17 is, I get one more chance, that's good. Charles.
Mr. Charles.
Oh, Charles.
Charles.
Charles. Sorry, mate. I think yours is around about. Number 4 it is, sorry. You've got around about, I think, 7 or $100.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Got it, buddy. Next one. I'm trying 13, Dave. I'm trying, but it hasn't come out yet, mate.
For that.
Oh, you're joking me. 13. Shit. I said to Dave, I'll try and pull out 13 tonight, but Stuart did it for me.
As long as you know the rules.
Congratulations, mate. Cheers, mate. Okay, and the last one
Lucky
is
last.
still about $40 worth or something. Is
Number 14.
14, who is Kurt. Oh, Kurt, your mate. Good on you, buddy. Well done. Cheers, mate. Thank you, sir.
Try and even
Yeah, do that, mate. So, guys, we are open downstairs till 9 o'clock, and then we're going to close the door. And if you're welcome to buy anything, it's all 30% off for now till the next seminar, which is a good 2 weeks away. So, what the next seminar is on is, not really quite sure. We've got 2 choices. It's all going to be on. Have we done the jigging one yet? I don't know if we have.
We done jigging 4 weeks ago.
Jigging, like as in Amberjack's
Amberjack
Kings.
Kingies,
We
yeah.
did we? Okay. So I was going to a bit left field there. How many guys here go up the reef, tow the boats up 70, stuff like that? No one here? I think they're doing something like on a reef one. So they just done a reef trip up from Ellie to Cairns last week and learned a bit in that week period, 8 days to sea. Anyhow, I'll put it out there and see who's interested. Something different. But yeah, so then the next one after that will be, we've got one coming up soon with Johnny, the Jack Guide with on Jacks. And what else? Oh, whiting fishing. So if you're into whiting fishing, we'll tell you about that too. Yeah, whiting one coming up. But it'll be whiting on bait, not lures. Yeah, that's it. Okay, guys. We'll go downstairs and I'll let you out. Or you want to just hang around? Hang around. Stuart, thanks very much, mate.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Eddie.
And thank you. Stuart, you stop. I don't know how to stop.
I wasn't aware of it. Turn it off.
Sorry, guys. I'll see you downstairs. We'll be, mate. We'll be, mate.